Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Hump Day edition of After Hours AM. Yes, I did say Hump Day. Remember the camel? Remember, Steve? Remember the Hump Day? It's Hump Day! Well, I'm Joel Sturgis, your host. Right along with me is...
Steve Asher. How you guys doing?
Mr. Stephen Asher. We, as everyone remembers, we had Stephen as a guest not too long on the show, and he's got a great book out there, of course. Go ahead, plug it, Steve, man. You got to do that.
You're too kind. It's Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary through Permuted Press, available on Amazon and all digital formats and better bookstores everywhere.
But even some bad ones. They don't have to be better. They just have to have books.
Oh, yeah, as long as the check clears, I'm good.
What would you do if you walked to an adult bookstore and there's your... Well, first off, you'd never be in one. But what I'm saying...
It's a trick question.
Exactly. I didn't want to lead you down a wrong path. Let's just say hypothetically, Mr. Steve Asher is walking on the streets of his hometown, and if you do have an adult bookstore, and I'm sure you don't. Most small towns don't.
Pretty small
But
town.
what would you do if you saw your book right next to Hustler?
Well, I would probably see if it's selling.
You would probably...
I know, come on. I would see if it's selling. And honestly, if it was doing well, I would probably contact the publisher and tell them they might want to laminate most of the pages.
Well, exactly. Yeah, because there is a factor involved that most people don't want to be.
We'll leave that be.
Yeah, we will leave that be because we have to. But, my 12-year-old brain is going, there's a million jokes in the back of my head going, oh, my God, I could just run along all night with that joke. But yes, this is the Wednesday edition of After Hours AM. And with me, of course, is Mr. Stephen Asher, or Steve Asher, better known by his friends. And wow, man, it has been a crazy week on this end. I know it's been a crazy week on your end. I am working like a madman because, I went and took the leap, started my own business. And it has been nothing but craziness. Really a lot of money, too, being dumped into it. You never make money with your own business right away. And that's what sucks.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, I've had very few businesses. I've had a lot of hobbies.
Sure.
Because generally, it's like you said, it's a hobby until it starts making money, and then it's sort of a business.
Exactly.
But it's definitely one of those touch and go things, especially that first year. And which is not to say that it's not rewarding, obviously, but when you do see a return and kind of recoup some of your time and money and sweat and tears and all that stuff, it's definitely when it makes it all worth it.
And then the wife stops beating you. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah,
make some money.
It's all about
for Christ's sake, make some money.
Yeah, you got to make the donuts.
You got to make the donuts, otherwise, otherwise the wife isn't so happy. But that being said, there's a lot of headlines out there, and over the next hour, we're going to kind of go over some of these because some of them are really, really weird. I was over here at the Week in the Weird website, which is basically a gathering house of all sorts of paranormal, just headlines. And I'd forgotten about the story, Voices of Bigfoot Captured. In the 1970s, two men recorded a series of stunning vocalizations that would go down as the best audio evidence of Sasquatch ever captured, known as the Sierra Sounds. Did you ever hear that story about the Sierra Sounds?
I've touched on it a little bit. I don't know as much about it, obviously, as you do. You're much more of the crypto.
I am just reading right off the Galdang website, man. So I am flying without. I remember vaguely hearing about it, and these clips we're gonna play. We're gonna play one or two of them here. Have fascinated, stumped everyone from professional, zoologists in the universities to professors to the novice. It doesn't matter who you are. These vocalizations from the 1970s still stand up, and and that's just it. I mean, what do you think about Bigfoot? Are you a believer in the big hairy fella?
It's sort of like I guess I would sort of be an agnostic Bigfoot believer. I do think that there's certainly something in a lot of the stories, obviously, with you can dispel some of the hoaxes and stuff, but I mean, there's even some of that here in Western Kentucky where I am, and so I mean, it's one of those type of things. It's worldwide,
sure,
just like a lot of different phenomenon, and I don't think they all sprang up with the same idea simultaneously. I believe there has to be something going on.
Well, you live near the infamous land between the lakes.
Yeah, I'm not 15 minutes from it.
Yeah, that has been a hotbed of sightings of not just Bigfoot. What all goes in and around, and what happens that you've heard of in the land between the lakes?
I mean, I've heard everything from obviously they refer to it here as the Beast of LBL.
Okay.
And so I mean, it's been described as everything as sort of a Bigfoot type creature. To almost like a mixture of something like that and like the goat man that you hear about. We've heard of, dogmen sightings. We've heard of even some people talking about reptilian, not so much like maybe visitors. Well, it could be visitors. I don't know.
You just never know.
No, I mean, there's just a lot of that, and there's a lot of ghostly activity down there.
And don't forget about hiking, camping, boating, hunting.
Oh, the water sports. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine that? Hey, honey, let's take the kids on a trip. Go to the LBL. Sounds great, honey. You show up. You're there at night, and next thing you hear is this come from the LBL.
We're in for night view.
I would run.
It almost sounds like wood knocks at first, and then it.
Yeah. I mean, because it goes on for 4 minutes and 12 seconds, of course, and the whole knocking thing. I've heard a lot of theories behind the knocking with Sasquatch, and it must be communication, obviously, between them. Maybe they're hunting. Think about that.
Well, and can come to think of it, it's a situation where you could have, if you know a certain pattern that you're tapping out, as opposed to signaling or making a vocalization or using them. I don't think they're using smoke signals or anything.
No.
What I mean is, what I'm saying though is that's something that happens in nature, but so a person couldn't necessarily go, oh, well, that's what that is.
True. I don't know, man. Bigfoot is really, really one of those things that people are still looking. I've gone on a Squatch hunt recently, and it was really kind of interesting. A lot of weird, strange things does happen. I have some very good friends that are avid squatchers, and they have some very compelling evidence of the existence of Bigfoot. I personally have yet to have that encounter, that oh my God, now I'm a believer counter.
Right, that oh my God moment.
Like, oh my God, it's huge, run! I have yet to have that moment.
Well, I have a friend named Lucas Frelix. He's one of the team members on the Caldwell County Paranormals team that I run, and he's like, this is a country area, but I'm talking out in the sticks,
Yeah.
And he's dealt with that kind of stuff off and on since he was a small kid. And at first you're like, well, maybe it's a bear that wandered into the woods, or it could be 100 different things,
Sure.
But as he started studying, reading and stuff like that, and obviously with the advent of finding Sasquatch and stuff like that type of programming, it started kind of coming together. And it's like, I'm really thinking this is what it is. And he's very much kind of a cryptozoologist mindset like you are. So, like I said, I never pushed off into this hard because I'm like, okay, he's got this on lock.
Well, yeah. Could you imagine, though? I would really rather run into a ghost than a Bigfoot, to be honest with you, because at least you can run through a ghost. You're not going to run through a 10-foot tall hairy beast that could rip you apart.
No, that's not happening. Yeah. I'm seriously sitting here trying to ponder what in the heck I would do, other than only thing I would assume is I would probably just freeze up and go, okay, maybe he won't see me. Like I'll go back to like that 5-year-old kid. I'm closing
exactly.
my eyes, I'm invisible, right?
Yeah. Well, that is exactly why I always carry Jack Links with me.
Oh, Jack Links. What's the Jack Links?
No, Jack Links.
Half lean and part Jack.
No, Jack Links, the jerky. Messing with Sasquatch official jerky.
I was just tearing up some of that earlier. I was trying to get prepped for this.
I'd be like, hey, look what I got. You don't want to mess with me. Go get it, boy. And I'd throw it in the woods and I'd run away.
What you do is you always bring a red shirt with you, okay? If you know what I'm talking about from Star Trek. You bring the one guy's like, he's all right, but he's expendable. You carry the Jack Links.
You'd make the weak link carry the Jack Links.
Only the strong survive.
So you'd purposely bring somebody that's slow, or at least have a hammer in your pocket so you could kneecap them, so you could run away.
No, see, now you make it sound like a Nancy Kerrigan moment.
Well,
no.
I'm just saying, if you're going to run away from a Sasquatch, you just said, now, I like you, man. We're good, but we're good friends, but you just said you'd bring the weakest link out with you.
No, I'm saying somebody's got to carry the jerky. I mean, if we're carrying like 45 pounds of equipment, if you can't carry like five bags of Jack Links, it's like
you just carry the Jack Links, man. We got the rest of this stuff.
Maybe that's kind of a Darwin moment, If you can't handle 5 bags of Jack Links and plugging these guys, but if you can't handle the jerky, you probably can't handle other stuff. So.
Well, and just saying, that's all you have to carry. Later on, we're going to rub you down bacon. Don't worry. It's just part of the squatching experience. Don't worry. And you're going to wander around the woods going, come here, Bigfoot, Bigfoot, Bigfoot. And we're going to see what happens.
Exactly right.
So don't worry about it.
Put them in like a wig, like a female, like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon. Dress them up like a big female Sasquatch with a purse and like a little
Sure, you
wig.
can walk around going, come on, big boy.
Yeah.
Where are you? But I think we should...
I study squatching in like Acme Academy.
Exactly. Now we're going to play a minute of this audio beyond the tree knocking. And this is the audio that has everybody in the world befuddled about Bigfoot. More knocking, obviously, I guess. Knocking.
You're trying to talk to this.
Oh, that's scary. Okay, man, that would be scary. Can you imagine being in the woods and hearing that, and not like being in a big tree stand or something way above the ground, but just standing there and hearing that?
Oh my God. No, I mean, at first, if you listen to the way it starts out, you hear something that sounds more wooden, which is closer. Then you hear something sort of off in the distance. It almost sounds like stone clacks.
Yes, exactly.
And then you start getting the whoop, whoop, and then you start getting it back, and then it starts going to like whoop, 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 and then it made a vocalization, which that's a vocalization, but it sounded like it said a sentence or two.
Yes, I would run away. I really would. I would run away streaming urine behind me. But then again, you don't want to do that because then you leave your scent, of course. But I'm just saying, I'd run away. I would definitely grab that weakest link and throw him into the fire at that point.
Okay, now you're agreeing with me. See,
I am. Now I totally get it now. Before I didn't get it.
Thank you.
I would totally grab that person and say, well, this is why we brought you. Into the fire. See you later.
Right. And you get your first 6 months in, your point man with the jerky.
Exactly. Well, Bigfoot may exist. He may not exist. But we will one day all know. I mean, it can't hide forever. He, she, it, colony, or whatever cannot hide forever. And one day, hopefully, we do get the definitive Bigfoot answer.
Well, and it might be a thing, too, that it's waiting for us to catch up, kind of where its mind's at. I mean, it might be a situation, all these different interactions and
Sure.
and sort of brushes aren't random.
Sure.
You know?
Well, exactly. Absolutely. And, you know, who knows? Like I said, you know, they could be much smarter than us. They could be waiting for us to catch up with them.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. How many times have you seen, you know, Bigfoot say, "Here, hold my beer, watch this"? I've never seen that.
Yeah, hold my Schlitz.
Oh, my Schlitz. Oh man.
I'm too poor to afford anything else. Hold the blue bull. I'm gonna go in.
Hold my Paps, buddy.
Yeah. Hold that Pabst Blue Ribbon. No, I don't want to spill a drop. But, yeah, moving along here on the headlines. Now, of course, everybody by now has pretty much seen The Conjuring 2 that's going to go to, in the theaters and see it. It hasn't been released in DVD yet, of course. But an interesting thing is it seems that from every thing that is being talked about with the movie, how good it is, whatever, a lot of viewers are saying that when they watched The Conjuring 2, that they had ghostly phenomena of their own. And I'm not sure, it says it followed them out of the theater is what their reports are saying. One of them said, I watched the movie, went home, and I saw almost the exact demon watching me from the corner of my room. Another person said they got home and they had poltergeist activity, as if something followed them home from the theater. I'm not sure, man. I mean, that just seems a little far-fetched.
I don't know. I mean, and like as I mentioned off air, me and my wife Cheyenne, my lovely wife Cheyenne, and we went and saw this at the local theater.
Sure.
And I liked it. I mean, I pretty much liked the Conjuring series so far, and but it was one of those things where I've seen worse. I've seen some stuff that really shocked me. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's got some creepy elements to it for sure. But I didn't walk out of there trembling. But
no, I didn't walk out there going, "Oh my god, that was the greatest movie I've ever seen in my entire life." It was all right. It had some good jump scares, and it had a pretty outlandish storyline that obviously never happened. But for what it was, entertainment value, yeah, it was good. Did I go home and have nightmares? No, I did not.
Well, no, I mean, I didn't shove any jerky in the Cheyenne's pockets.
No, I didn't say you're the weakest link to my wife Jen either. By the way, honey, you're the weakest link. Get out of here.
But I will tell you this: when I had spoke to I don't know what the technical term is for the popcorn jockeys. What do they call them? The guys that work in the counter workers,
refreshment engineer specialists.
Okay, okay. How do you exactly get the technician?
I'm not sure how they get the technician part, but I've heard them call themselves refreshment technicians.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's trying to get a raise.
I know it does, doesn't it? I want that 25-cent raise, please, that you promised me when I started.
I see the guy in the little vest with the braces. That's a good visual you just did.
Well, and it's always, whenever you go buy a ticket for a movie, it's always such a long line for the popcorn, right? And then by the time you get your popcorn, your pop, or your whatever else, the movie's starting. So you go in there and you try to find a seat. And, that's another reason why I don't go to too many movies, because quite honestly, I can't handle the cell phones out there now either. Because,
when they're popping them in the middle of the thing.
Exactly.
They're not recording or nothing. They're just like, yeah.
They're texting.
Ready to start.
Yeah, or they're taking a selfie, at the theater. Like,
right.
Oh, we're at the theater. Like everybody else really cares.
Do it out front. When you get the marquee.
Exactly.
Our theater has a lovely marquee. It's the old kind of Art Deco style. It's like built in the 20s and
sure.
Really cool looking. I'm like, man, don't get in that. Why do you want to get into a dark room like 2 rows ahead of me and blind me, man?
Nobody cares that you're at the movies. Nobody, except for maybe your stalker.
Only people that care, Only people that care right now that you're at the movies are the people that want you to leave the movies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Shut up and sit down. I've done that actually in the movie theater.
You've got to sometimes.
Oh yeah. Well, my wife, man, she'll get medieval on them though.
See, and that's the thing. My wife is really, really laid back. As long as it's not like, like you're bothering the kids or something. Then she'll go like Mama Bear and go off. But what I was gonna say was, I was speaking to the popcorn technician.
The technician, yes.
Guys. Anyway, and I said, it's looks like it's gonna be pretty good and whatever. And then I could watch it and I'll come back and he's like, well, what'd you think? And I said, it wasn't bad, you know. And there was some creepy stuff. And so, oh yeah, we've had some people walk out of here shaking, and
Really?
I'm like, really? I mean, really?
Were they
I
like-
said, no. And then have some kids, their parents, you know, come back for another movie and take them to something like, I don't know,
Finding Dory or some crap like
yeah,
that.
the Ice Age movie where they're
Yeah.
spaceship and all that mess. Anyway, and they said, oh, that's kind of a weird switch up. I said, oh no, the kid come home and cried about half the night, slept with a Bible on him, and I was like, good God, really?
Now,
This kid a helmet, he's not ready for the world. You know?
get him a bike helmet. He's pretty much done.
Oh my God.
You know, now, are you a bit? You know what? You're a bit of a local celebrity, so I would imagine everybody in town asked your opinion.
It's a small town.
It is, all 4 people.
Not saying much.
Yeah, all 5 people came up to you and they went, "Hey,
That's
what'd
it.
you think of the
I
movie?"
literally have tens of people show up.
Tens, the dozens and dozens of fans.
Some of them will walk in and out.
Well, that's just the way that one rolls.
Like, ah, crap, he's still here.
Yeah. Oh, did the guy? You know what? If I wanted to hear from a fat bald guy, I'd listen to After Hours AM.
Oh, but I'm sorry. What was your question? I was.
No, I was just joking with you about being the most famous person in your town.
Okay.
Of dozens and dozens of people.
It's funny because we've got several local writers, and most of them don't really touch on what I touch on.
Oh, no.
There's a lady by the name of Geraldine Stith, and she had wrote a book about the Kelly UFO controversy that happened in Kelly, Kentucky, just outside of Hopkinsville. And me and her have been friends off and on and stuff. But so it was, she released her book a while back. So I guess I'm just sort of like, okay, the new kid on the block. So it's sort of like, oh, this is new. But I have had people come to me after this show, and kind of just discuss it with me. And I'm like, well, look, being a small town, my first thing is, well, maybe you should say a prayer before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to your pastor, priest, shaman, whatever you voodoo witch doctor, whatever you adhere to.
Or go under your covers and go, oh please leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I'm gonna go. Because the covers are always the best defense against being
Absolutely.
scared.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was all about tucking them up under my feet.
It's like when you're a kid. Anything that scares you, you dive. You almost have to go dive, kind of like you're in a sub.
Hawkman.
Yes, exactly. And you dive under those covers, and everything doesn't seem so scary. But this movie was good, and I just didn't know when Ed Warren became such a home handyman. I don't recall ever hearing that about him.
I remember him like I'm trying to think of how to describe. Oh boy, I'm not going to do. How do I say this? Okay, he was a little bit more. Hey, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. He's more like Fat Tony. Hey, now.
There you go. That's a good way to describe it.
Hey, me and Guido, we're gonna come back here. We're gonna take care of that problem. You know what I'm saying?
Forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. But no, on the movies, he's doing home chores. Fixing plumbing. Well, the first one is car mechanics. Second one is fixing plumbing. What the hell, man?
Yeah, he's going to open a tire and lube.
Exactly. He's the one that really founded Lowe's.
It's like, the reactor is haunted. We can only get one man.
We can only get one man. That is
Come in here. The red line, the blue line, the black line. Which is it?
Yeah, can you imagine him in the next movie? He'll be defusing bombs.
It's going to be like Conjuring 3 meets like Die Hard.
Yeah, exactly. They told me come to the coast, have a good time. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you know kind of a little bit of the original stories of that I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
That's
the poltergeist story in England, right?
Yeah, the Enfield. Yes, I wrote an article about it, in fact. But
right.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, it was kind of like, it kind of has it a little bit, but it kind of don't exactly cover it, right? And because it was always sort of a weird case because, honest to God, though, it probably struck me as one of the most human cases because even kids in screwed up situations, if they do have some activity, sometime they're going to go, well, hey, this does get me attention.
Exactly. Well, the thing of it is I did talk to the original writer, Playfair. Lionel Playfair, about his book that came out way before the movie and way before Ed and Lorraine. And he said they were there 12 hours tops during the entire investigation.
Right.
So they really did nothing. Stood around.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I try to explain to folks, and I started to say kids. I mean, I'm 46. Everybody's
everyone's a kid to me now too. I'm 42 years old. It's like I remember when I was their age.
I remember when cars are made of wood. The panels are wood.
Yeah.
I try to tell the kids radios were wood.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw a buggy without a horse. I remember that. It was popping black smoke. Yeah, that's old. But no, the movie is not a fair representation of the case. I think that if anyone's interested in the Enfield Poltergeist case, dive into some of the better literature out there. But as far as entertainment goes, it's good.
It's really great. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I didn't mean to walk over what you're saying, but that's exactly it. You have to sort of suspend belief to a point and just go, I'm going to have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. But do I believe that there's attachments coming out of the theater with them? I'm not quite sure.
I'll say this about the original Exorcist. Now, I've heard a lot of different stuff that said the way they filmed it, the type of music, with the sort of the tones of the music, and the way, the angles it was shot.
Okay.
It obviously built suspense, but a lot of people said it had a psychological effect on people.
Ooh, maybe it did. Maybe
they're me because I was small when I watched it first time.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where that I could kind of go, yeah. Do I think you're going to have Slimer coming through, ranging your whatnots? Doubtful.
No, I highly doubt that that's going to happen. And The Exorcist was groundbreaking. No one had really seen anything that intense ever at the theaters. And so here we come with a pea soup puking girl, and of course that is going to rattle a lot of moviegoers. We're such an advanced and sophisticated moviegoer now.
We're jaded,
Yeah, so we've seen it all, we've done it all. Show us something that truly shakes us to the core. And nothing within the last 10 years has been able to do that.
Something I was thinking about. First, I thought it was going to be a reboot, which most reboots I've not really been a fan of. I did go watch the Ghostbusters thing.
How was it?
You know what? Okay, I watched the Poltergeist reboot.
Yeah,
I watched the Ghostbusters one.
Yeah.
Poltergeist, the way they did it, they changed certain characters up.
Sure.
Like the lady that said, this house is clean.
Yeah, exactly. To the
she
dude.
was a dude.
Yep.
I think it was Irish or something.
Yeah.
Kind of a rough and gruff kind of guy.
Sure, anyway, I like that. I thought that was a good part of the show.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I look at it like this, because I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I look at it like this. Okay, this is like Earth, like 467 or something. It's like an alternate Earth with a slightly different change up. The same events happen, but it happened a different way.
Sure.
All in all, I thought it was an entertaining film. I thought it was actually done pretty well.
Yeah, I went and saw it in 3D, and I liked it. I thought it was actually pretty darn good. But the Ghostbusters all-female cast, give us your no prisoners assessment of that film.
Okay, if I, as a original diehard, dyed in the wool Ghostbusters fan, okay, if you're going in there thinking that's going to be the same, or even like the next generation, like it's one of their kids that took over the thing, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I'm not going to say it was an abortion, but it wasn't good.
An abortion? Oh, that's strong terminology there. I've heard the same thing.
Well, but and the thing was, and I'm a father of 3 daughters. I'm all about, there's tons and tons of funny women. Those women have been great in other roles. Mm-hmm. It was, okay, like say like a 5-star deal.
Yeah.
For the fact that some of my daughters liked it, and it kind of sort of had to do with Ghostbusters.
Kind of sort of had to do with it.
It had the ssame people in different roles, which I wasn't crazy about that, but I would give it a 2.5 or 3.
Oh, that low, huh?
Out of a 5, I mean, I can't really.
Well, and you did throw your daughters in there as part of saying why you liked it. No. Did you like it?
For the entertainment value alone, it was all right. Nothing in it really wowed me. It didn't really do anything that I thought was super groundbreaking. Again, though, I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of those gals and like.
Well, exactly. I mean, they're talented. I'm not saying these girls aren't talented, these women, because they all are in their own right. Absolutely. But was this the right film for them? I've heard it time and time again, no, it was not the right film for them. But that being said, man, we got to, go pay some bills, take a break. We come back more. Your headlines don't go anywhere.
ideas, work, and creativity that make it your yard. At Ace, we're here to help with hoses and sprinklers to nurture growth, gardening tools for the shape of good things to come, even the right fertilizer and bug killers to make the grass a little greener. You'll find it all now at Ace, your place, with everything you need for your yard, plus helpful advice, almost like we're right there. Ace,
the helpful place.
Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852, or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com.
You gotta do what you gotta do, right?
So what you gotta do is serve fried bats?
Yep. Do you know what they call bats?
Bats.
Chicken of the cave.
No one calls them chicken of the cave. Who's they, by the way?
There's a guy I met named Paco. Sells biker speed at the pier.
So that guy calls them chicken of the cave?
Yeah.
That's not they.
Woohoo! Well, welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Jill Steers. Right along with me is Mr. Steven Asher. Hey, Steve. That's when you say, "Hey, it's me, Steve Asher." By the way.
Oh, okay. Hey, it's me.
Yeah,
Steve
and then you got to do like this. Well, hey, everybody. This is Steve Asher, and I am here to sell you some insurance. No.
That's like when I was a DJ. You know, hey, all right.
Yeah, all right. It's that golden hour. All right. 2-for-1s down at the local pub.
Spinning the platters that really matter.
yeah, rocking the docks. No, shaking the waves and rocking the docks. We were just talking off air, of course. We were talking about remakes and how hardcore some folks are on remakes. I'm kind of an agnostic on remakes until I see the remake. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to believe. Is it good? Is it bad? I guess I take my own. But now when they start remaking, like Halloween, right? Rob Zombie's version, in my own opinion, was not anywhere near as good as the Carpenter stuff.
No, well, I mean, and in this, I'll say this. He wrote it from the eyes of a 70s child who loved that film.
Yeah.
And I know he tried to include a lot of, like the Kiss clothes and a lot of the music.
Sure.
That was like the outside world that he was in watching that.
Yeah.
If you looked at, like the original Halloween and stuff, there was, stuff going on and, they were smoking a little weed and stuff, but it wasn't as gritty and maybe better for the fact of not being, but he kind of included what he kind of felt connected with his childhood. Yeah. And so I kind of understood it. So I took it was like, you know what? It's like, to me, it's an homage, I guess.
I think you're right. And I finally caught, actually, I haven't been able to see this yet, but I bought season 1 of Ash versus the Evil Dead. And I don't know.
I see that. I've not even seen it yet.
Oh, it's great. It is every bit as good as the movies.
That's high praise.
Yeah, because it's got, of course, Bruce Campbell in it is playing Ash.
How could it go wrong?
With that same swagger, that same wisecracking going on, it actually held my attention for all 10 episodes, and that's hard to do.
If he ran for president, I know this is probably the dumbest thing where I would vote for him.
Oh, I would too. I would, especially if he says, "Vote for me and my boomstick."
Oh, yes.
Or give me some sugar, baby. I mean, just those lines, those are great films.
Walk softly and carry a boomstick.
Exactly. And again, another remake gone failure is the new Evil Dead.
Yeah, I'm see, but the thing is, and I understand that they're doing things to sort of, I'm assuming, again, that maybe it's like, well, here, we'll make the character female. We're empowering females. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that you're not going to see a Chinese woman play Dr. Martin Luther King.
No, you're not.
Don't. There's no point. What are you trying to prove? Just let it be what it is. Yeah. I don't understand. I'm not saying there's an agenda there, but it's just like,
I think what they're doing, to be honest with you, as an avid moviegoer, avid movie lover, the movie studios are trying to make a few more bucks off these properties that they own. Hey, let's just make a quick and dirty remake of, let's just say, Amityville Horror. Let's get this out there. Let's make a few $million before we mothball the entire thing. And one thing that like The Thing, a remake of that remake of The Thing, that was one of the scariest movies of my youth. Was John Carpenter's The Thing.
With Kurt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was that whole, you're in the Arctic, you have nowhere to run, that whole feeling of claustrophobia because you don't know who to trust and what's going on.
You're alone.
You're alone.
Constantly.
It is. It's like just a pressure cooker that just keeps going and going and going and going. And then I watched the remake, a few years ago, and it's like, oh my God, they totally missed the spirit of the film. It's just nowhere near as good as the John Carpenter. And that's where it sours me on the remake situation.
Right. Well, and, like we were talking about, them wanting to do a remake of It, Stephen King's It, which is like my all-father of writing. And I spoke to my oldest daughter, who is, I call her the movie snob. Affectionately so.
Yep.
And she's like, it's human garbage. I'm not going to watch that.
It's human garbage.
She's got a lot of my.
Was she even alive when the original It came out?
What you got to remember is this: my kids saw all the Stephen King stuff relatively early, and understand. When I got married and started having kids, I was still in full punk rock mode. The mohawk and the combat boots and all
sure.
That.
You were the swinging punk rocker thing going on. Still playing the guitar.
But, by doing that, especially when you have your first kid, I was pretty young when I had my first kid, so I treated her more like a little sister, And so I didn't realize, I have to be dad. I was just thinking, this is cool. I can pal around with this kid. It was kind of like Big Daddy.
Hey, look, I'm a mini-me. Look, I can do whatever. Right. Yeah, look at this. It's pretty cool. I hear you.
So she kind of became opinionated on things, and I'm like, well, okay, but you have to look at it like this. Kids that are, say, 16, 15,
sure,
they're introducing it in a way that they kind of relate to it.
Yeah.
Which not everybody, which don't get me wrong, I love early films, old Vincent Price films and the old Hammer films and all the Grindhouse stuff. And I like that gritty kind of dated 70s feel, a Kolchak the Night Stalker and all that.
That's
was my milieu. I'm right there.
Well, I think though the worst remake I would have to say that I've watched of a really, really scary movie was the remake a few years ago of The Last House on the Left. Oh,
that was a stinker. Yeah,
because that movie, of course, scared a generation of people. Because for the first time, it wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a monster. It was people that could bust into your house, take you over, and impose their will on you.
Well, I think it's where it sort of bled over into like the Purge stuff, which is kind of like that, but on a larger scale, in my view.
Sure.
So, and I think it gets to the point where it's like, okay, here's another guy with a mask, and you do the same formula so long. I'm curious about this this next part of the series of the Blair Witch thing.
Mm-hmm.
First I thought it was a remake, but it said it's a sequel. which is great because I hated the second one. I thought
the second one was absolute garbage. Just don't even look at it. Don't even watch it. The first one was passable. I thought the first one they could have done a whole lot more with the lore. They could have done. I mean, I get what they're after. They're getting after that whole alone in the woods feel, the disorientation, but they didn't do enough with the lore. The scare factor for me personally, the payoff at the end in the cabin just was not for me.
Right. They should have went a little bit more into it. There's a comedian by the name of Dana Gould, and he was his daughter's kind of a movie snob too. And anyway, they had just got done or were finishing up the movie, and was on the way out, and she says, "Hey, I think I left something in the theater." And he said, "What?" He says, 2 hours of my life.
2 hours of my life and dignity. Yeah. Yeah.
But what do you think about I'm blank. The Witch.
Yeah, they actually get a show this go around. Is the Witch actually involved?
Well,
you know what I mean? Does she make at least somewhat of a presence in this film?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's one of those things that you're going to kind of have to wait and see. But I'm glad that the fact that at least it's back to we're in the woods. We're not walking around. We're not all tatted up, and the girls are showing their chi-chis and stuff and losing their minds, and everybody's methed out.
True.
It's like camera, couple of normal people walking around. Okay, there's something not right happening in the woods.
Yeah,
that's scary. I mean, because being from Princeton, there's a lot of woods here. When we saw the original Blair Witch Project, we were living in a little place just outside of Princeton called Farmersville. And which pretty much everywhere in this area is Farmersville, but that's the name of the area.
Sure.
So, and we had probably about a 200, 300-foot walkway path through our little house we were staying in, and her parents' house. The first place we got was like right up on behind some property of theirs.
Sure.
And so we would go walk there at night and talk to them, but you're walking through there's cornfields right next to you, and then you can hear coyotes off. And
oh my gosh, it would have been terrifying.
Oh yeah, it was no good. It was just because it was this is a great film. Oh God, we got to go back to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I thought the Blair Witch Project, the original, did a fabulous job of the build-up with the found footage. I mean, they really made it sound like it was a real case.
Well, what do you think about the original Paranormal Activities? I actually liked them, especially the earlier ones.
Yeah, I liked the first one. I thought that was pretty ingenious because nothing had been seen like that. And then, of course, it takes a big dump in the in the proverbial toity, and he also became a steamer. But right. Or kind of like Saw, the same thing with the Saw movies. They started off strong, and then, oh my God, what were you thinking? I think the last Paranormal Activity I saw was the marked ones, and after that I stopped watching because, quite honestly, it couldn't get any worse. But the first couple of them I thought were pretty good. The found footage again, of course, of these people.
Oh, it was super creepy.
I mean, it was creepy. It was more of a total jump scare. It was definitely a theaters movie. Yeah, I mean, you could only watch it once. There was no really re-watching value to that movie. Because once you'd watched it, in my opinion anyway, you knew exactly the jump scares that were coming.
Right.
So it was no longer...
And the moment was spent.
Yes, exactly. It was like a good friend of mine that makes movies. His name is George Romero. You might have heard of him here and there.
I've heard of old George.
Yeah, and he calls it money shot filmmaking.
Exactly right.
Is what he calls that, where it's just a jump. Where I was doing an interview with him one time, and we had brought up the Paranormal Activity movies, and he coined the phrase "money shot filmmaking." And I said, "Okay, all right, George, tell me your theory on the money shot filmmaking." And of course, we all know where the original money shot came from. But he says they're what they're doing is, imagine you have a balloon and you're just slowly letting a little bit of that air out. You know what I mean? And once the balloon's done, it's done. The movie's done. You're just absolutely spent. But every time you go for that big jump, you go for that big jump again. It doesn't really rely on the psychological. It relies on your lower brain reaction to what's happening around you. That fight or flight instinct.
Right.
And that's why there's no resale value. I mean, there's no rewatch value, in my opinion, unless you're a big fan of the acting and how it's shot and da-da-da-da. But as far as a pure movie experience, that's one and done, baby. That's it for me.
Right. Well, you know something I was thinking about? There was another movie. Did you ever see Shadow People? The movie Shadow People?
You know, I'm not sure if I have. Why don't you enlighten me on that one?
Well, it's basically, there was a guy and he was researching some stuff and was a photographer, I believe, and he started getting, these odd photos in places. And then it was one of those type of things. I believe it's a movie called 8mm. It says, you stare into the darkness long enough, it stares back. Mm-hmm. It was more like, and they started having all these experiences at home. Which, what I was going to say was that reminded me of one of the stories that it was mentioning, talking about that they said that they're investigating the link between the Shadow Man phenomenon and the terrifying Hat Man visitations.
Okay.
And I just thought that was kind of interesting because I know myself, I've seen similar things to this.
You ever seen a shadow person?
I have.
You have?
I don't know. Okay, I will tell you my experience.
Okay, go ahead. Lay it on me, man.
I was still working in the penitentiary. I was working nights. I'd come home. I was in bed by probably noon because I had to be up and ready and all that and leaving by 10 o'clock that night.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, this was our old house in the master bedroom. And so anyway, I don't know if I heard something. Something roused me. So I kind of creep my eyes open just a little bit because it's just enough light in the room that I can kind of see what's going on. But, when you're asleep, you're all kind of closed up and all that. Yeah. So anyway, I see something standing up. Looks like it's propped there in front of the dresser.
Ooh.
And I'm like, my mind is not even in this area, right? My mind's like going, well, why did she put the coat rack there? And I'm like, that's just weird. Maybe she's vacuuming. I was like, wait a minute, we don't have a coat rack.
We don't want one.
And by then, I didn't even say anything. I didn't do anything. Then I kind of eased my head up off the pillow just enough. Whatever it was, like I said, it was about 6 foot tall. It kind of slid down about a foot and to the left, and went whoosh, just like dissipated into the floor.
Once it realized you're looking at it, is that what it took off? Once it realized, you were aware?
I can only assume that.
Wow, man.
I jumped up, and the first thing, I jump off the bed, not because I'm a tough guy, because I'm scared.
Sure.
So I've got there, I'm balled up like Ali, thinking, who's in this room running around messing with me? Did somebody just sneak in? Does my family hurt? Who knows, right? Yeah. You go into, it's fight or flight. And
we're going to have a throwdown. Yeah,
I'm not trying to, suplex this guy or nothing, but I'm like, it's messing with my family. I'm going to crack him, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I jump up, I look around the closet. Then I think, well, maybe somebody's clowning with me. Hey, who's in the room? No, nobody, okay. And I was like, well, did we have a delivery or something? Did maybe, because we have a front door maybe 5 feet from where my door is, did somebody come up? Maybe a shadow played funny?
Yeah. I'm trying to rationalize it in your mind.
Because the alternative is not acceptable at the time. So I'm like, well, I don't understand. And so anyway, we go about our day, and I didn't have anything else going on like that. But no one had come up, nobody had walked by the room, nobody had been in the room, and so I couldn't really explain it. It was one of those, like you said, one and done deals.
Yeah.
It's just interesting how I've talked to a lot of people who have either had the Shadow Man or what they call the Hat Man. I've seen one other shadow as a young kid, but it wasn't a Hat Man. This thing looked like it had the hat, and that's what was so strange, because it didn't like walk through a wall. It almost,
dude, that'd be creepy.
It was so odd. You ever seen like those videos where somebody comes up, or it looks like somebody comes up in a sheet, and somebody goes, "Okay, come here," and they pull the sheet off, and the sheet just drops. Whoosh.
Sure.
There's nobody there, and they freak out.
Yep.
It was like that, but this was like probably in 2008.
And it scared the living bejesus out of you, I'm sure of it.
Oh, yeah, I was up. For the rest of the day.
Yeah, I bet you were. I would have been like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to understand that the house was probably built about 1910, 1912.
Sure.
They had viewings in the
Oh, yeah, I got one of those old houses. I got 1898 is when mine was built, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The odds of you have had a viewing, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Viewing is pretty darn high. I never realized that. I didn't know that until later talking to the owner, and he talked about they had like their grandfather out there. And like, that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I could have gone my whole life without knowing there were dead people being viewed in my home.
Thanks for the nightmares, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, man. Where were they viewed? Oh, my bedroom, you say. Oh, that's even better. Thank you.
No, you know, the only thing, and I'll tell you, I actually just thought about this. The only thing, I was trying to look around, and now, see, we had old furniture from the house. When we bought it, we got like the beds and the poster board, this and that, and all the whatevers. So anyway, but we had a flag of, like a rolled up flag that the owner's grandfather had, and it was up on top of the closet close to where that was at. Well, I didn't throw it away or nothing. I just wrapped it up and then I put it up in a storage building, and I didn't have any other issues. So I don't know if maybe something was connected to that. But you understand, when you have 3, 4, 5 generations of people living there, then you're the new family.
Yes. You have a lot of eyes, whether you know it or not, on you.
Well, I mean, then you start doing, the old standard line of, well, we started doing remodeling, or we took a wall down, or we said, yeah, we don't like that, eddy-year wallpaper. We're going to jerk that off.
We're going to paint over it, do whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Lots of people come to, I've heard that story over and over. Yeah, everything was great until we did some remodeling, and all hell just break loose. I didn't know what was going on. We just wanted to, change the wallpaper or rip it down or redo the floors. Next thing you know, they have the second coming of the Amityville Horror or Poltergeist, and they hear, "Get out!" and they're home.
Yeah, it was like one of those. I mean, it wasn't like to the point of like I'm gonna have to call Zaffis in or something and cart everything out of the building. But
I need a young priest and an old priest right now.
Okay, send in the priest. Yeah, if I started seeing dressers moving, I was out.
Yeah. I think I'd be right there with you. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Great post, but we're out of here, man. We're gonna have it as a rental now. We'll let the other people deal with it.
Well, think about it like this though. If you could actually have used that, it's like, hey, Pazuzu, come on, we're gonna move a 4-poster bed. Just pick it up, put it on the thing. Bada bing, bada boom. Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it. We'll get it done. Not a problem. If only you could harness the power of their abilities to move things, clean, or heck, even light carpentry. That'd be wonderful.
So, like, turn the powers for good, kind of like a Suicide Squad.
Exactly. I have not seen that movie yet, as well, but I will.
I have not either.
I want to see the worst way.
This is what I've heard, was that it was more like, Harlequin is like all in love with the Joker, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but as I remembered, I'm more of a Marvel guy. Okay, I'm not dogging DC, but I'm just saying I'm more of a Marvel guy. But as I understand, he kidnapped her and did all kinds of wacky stuff to her. So her fascination is more like a Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, I think you're right. See, now I am a DC fan. I love Batman. I've always liked the Batman story.
Oh, always like the Blue Devil.
Yep. Simply because Batman is not a superhero, really, at his core. He is just a normal guy with oodles and oodles of money that has the ability to make cool gadgets, and, he's just a guy. I always enjoyed the Superman story as well, but now with this the bad guys turning good, or they're anti-heroes, and I don't understand. I guess I get it, but then again, I don't get it, because now Marvel is pretty good. Don't get me wrong. Marvel's had some great, fascinating characters throughout the years. Everything from the Avengers, the X-Men, you name it. But DC seems to be that darker comic. Yeah, I mean, like the Dark Knight series and things like that.
Well, sure, all the Dark Horse stuff, and and I think, I'm thinking, was it Gillum? All his stuff, like the Death character and all that stuff, it tied in with that, the Sandman stuff and all that. Which now, did you follow the thing where like Captain America went all like Hell Hydra on everybody?
No, I did not follow that personally.
Yeah, I was looking at like, what the, Ecuador.
And, for the love of Ecuador. But anyhow, getting back to the DC universe of things, I liked, to some extent, I did see the Batman versus Superman. And I'm sure you did as well. I liked it, but Ben Affleck, in a way, killed it for me.
I was waiting for Matt Damon to show up somewhere.
Yeah, and that, especially he looked like overly chubby. Super Batman at times. You know what I mean? Like the Campbell's kid.
I think it's just the way the suit was. I think they were.
But you know
trying
what
to
I'm
ape
saying,
the old
right?
Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Kind of super stocky Batman.
Yeah.
But the way his face looks like it was smushed, in. So it looks like Brando kind of post-apocalypse now. What was it? The Dr. Moreau. And,
yeah. Well, I was just waiting for Batman to kill him or Superman to kill him and be done. Which of course they can't do that, obviously. But in the quote-unquote real world, if someone had that kind of immense power, he'd just kill you and be done. There would be no epic battle in some tower somewhere.
Unless there's some great cosmic force that would stop that from happening.
Exactly. I'm just saying, the movie was a good movie for what it was. I know you saw it as well. What do you think? Did you like it? Because that's what leads up to the Suicide Squad.
Like you said, it's one of those things where you either have to suspend your belief, and just kind of go, okay, this is where they're going with it. I mean, it's one of those things. I grew up liking both those characters.
Yeah.
I jumped out of many a trees with, a towel button to my or clothespin to my shirt and whatever, or try to climb up the walls like Batman and all that stuff, like from the '60s Adam West stuff. And did you hear anything about Adam West and Burt Ward coming back to voice some Batman animated stuff?
Yeah, I have heard that. I've actually heard
what?
that. Yeah, that is cool. I know I haven't seen The Killer Joke yet. Everyone keeps telling me for animation to go watch the Batman The Killer Joke.
I'm like you said, I'm sort of on the fence because I don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was a great comic. It was wonderful, but I don't know, man. You know what? There's just some things from my youth that really just like to just remember as being good, kind of like the Transformer films. That's why I haven't seen any of the Transformers.
Well, see, and I think that goes round again to kind of what, like we were talking about, people that's so hardcore about films. That is a piece of their childhood.
Yes.
And I can understand them not wanting that. I can't. I'm kind of bastardized, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I like G.I. Joe, right? I was forced to watch G.I. Joe, and I was a huge G.I. Joe fan as a kid. I mean, I had the action figures and everything, and Barbies and G.I. Joe had many, many wars in the backyard.
Oh, yeah.
But I watched the movie, and it's like, oh, you totally killed it.
Yeah, they totally take the spirit out of it.
Yeah.
It turns into a smash fest.
You almost feel like you have to go take a shower afterwards, and you're like, oh, that was just horrible.
Well, and then I don't know if it's a thing that they're just delivering crap because they don't have any good stories, or if they're delivering crap because people are eating it up, because people now, and again, I'm the token old guy, kind of just maybe they're like, I'm like, no, go. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Look back.
Well, the thing of it is, the reason why, I think a reason why a lot of the comic books are now movies is because people don't read like they did.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? People didn't, like I used to rush right down to, at that time, the Newsette was what sold all the comics when I was a kid. Rushed down there and got my, new Superman comic. Oh my God, I pour over that for a whole day, reading it over and over. Now it's, wow, nobody reads like that anymore. You don't hear about anyone having a comic book collection anymore. And that very well could be why they've had to switch gears and go into that different media just to stay relevant. I get that, but don't kill the characters while you're doing it.
Right, or if you're going to do that, make it to where you start covering another universe of the characters or something.
Yeah.
And touch on that.
Yeah.
But quit. Don't mess up the formula if it's all right.
It's just messing everything up, in my opinion. I mean, it just.
Well, did you have like the big long boxes? I'm talking about the long boxes that you keep all your comics in.
Yes.
You had the little acid-free paper.
I did. I was serious at one time until my mother threw them all away, and I'm still angry with her to this day. How did you do this to me? Why? But, that being said, we got to run. We're going to play the Fox News, and we come back, Mr. Matt Swayne. We're going to talk a little bit of haunted rock and roll when we come back, as well as a little haunted country music, because he's coming out with a great new book, Ghosts of Country Music. So be right back right after this.
Fox News Radio, I'm Kathleen Maloney. The presidential candidates will field questions on national security in a televised forum tonight. Fox's Gernal Scott has a live report.
Kathleen, the USS Intrepid Air and Space Museum in New York will host this first Commander-in-Chief forum that could go a long way in answering who would be best to serve as president. The forum will gauge Hillary Clinton's and Donald Trump's answers on issues of military matters, veterans affairs, and national security, and many of the questions will come from vets and active duty personnel. Now, both candidates will take the stage on the Intrepid, but not at the same time. The first face-to-face meeting is still set for the first presidential debate 2 weeks from next Monday, Kathleen.
And Gernal, before that forum, Donald Trump spoke at the New York Conservative Party's presidential convention.
This is, I guess, the first time in a long time that you really have a competitive person running for president that comes from New York. And I think we're going to do very well.
The Conservative Party officially nominated Trump for president on the New York ticket. Democrat Hillary Clinton winning the support of former Republican Senator William Cohen, who served as Bill Clinton's defense secretary. Cohen citing Clinton's experience in the White House Situation Room as Secretary of State. More tensions between the U.S. and Russia.
A U.S. defense official tells Fox a Russian jet flew within 10 feet of a U.S. Navy spy plane Wednesday in the Black Sea. There is a classified photo of the incident, but it has not been downgraded for release.
Fox's Lucas Tomlinson at the Pentagon. The Navy is calling the incident unsafe and unprofessional. Stocks closing mixed. The Dow losing 12 points, S&P slipping a fraction, NASDAQ up 8 points, and Apple stock gaining ground after the company introduced new iPhones. You're listening to Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced. A visual aid on the House floor in the frustrating fight for Zika funding. Republican Congressman David Jolly of Florida appearing with a canister of mosquito larvae.
This is the fear of Floridians right here. It is not good enough to work on a compromise for months and months and months with no solution. The time for politics of Zika is over.
A $1.1 billion Zika funding bill is stalled in the Senate, where Democrats are blocking it because it includes restrictions on Planned Parenthood.
We're in discussions about how to work out some of the differences that we had that led to the Democrats filibustering Zika funding on multiple occasions. So we're looking for a way forward. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to do that.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. A comedian may face more than one accuser at his sex assault trial next summer.
Montgomery County prosecutors are looking to get 13 women who have accused Bill Cosby of sexual assaults on the stand. They all tell a similar story to the one told by Cosby's accuser, Andrea Constan, that the comedian gave them Quaaludes, other drugs, or alcohol before molesting them. This request is, of course, being challenged by the defense. However, under Pennsylvania law, the women could be allowed to testify to show an alleged pattern of behavior, even if no charges were ever filed in their cases. Cosby's attorneys were also fighting to keep a phone call between the comedian and the mother of his accuser from being heard by the jury. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
Following hundreds of overdoses, anyone who turns in heroin or other drugs in Cincinnati is promised immunity from prosecution. A judge says that's highly unusual, but necessary to help get potentially deadly drugs off the street. Sellers have been mixing heroin with a powerful animal tranquilizer. I'm Kathleen Maloney, Fox News Radio.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Steve Asher.
Mr. Steve Asher is here, and we are talking with Matt L. Swayne, or better known as Matthew L. Swayne, but I call him Matt Swayne because he's a buddy of mine. Come on, I can't be that formal. But, of course, everybody knows him from his other appearances on the show, writing a little book that has become a smash sensation, Haunted Rock and Roll, of course, and then, now, like, I've heard the buzz, I checked it out, talked to the fine folks at Llewellyn. You're coming back at us with something equally as fascinating. That's Ghosts of Country Music. Matt, man, the rock and roll is really the thing also, but the country music is really creepy. how, when you mesh the two books, are they kind of meshed together, or are they totally standalone kind of deal going on?
No, and first of all, thank you very much for having me back on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love doing this. I really appreciate it. There are points where rock and roll lore and country lore, ghost lore, kind of connect. One of those figures is kind of the nexus of popular music. I consider him the nexus, at least, which is Elvis. And Elvis appears in both of my books, both the rock and roll one and the country one, because his appeal was pretty broad. And, country people kind of claim him, and rock and roll people kind of claim him. So now I'm kind of and basically the process was I was working on this, haunted rock and roll, and I was researching that, and I would come by, and we were sort of talking about it off air here, but I would come across snippets of country ghost stories, and what I would do is I'm kind of an info pack rat. I would hold the story and stash it on a Google Doc somewhere, and then eventually I looked and I had quite a bit of material for a country book, and I also had material for another haunted rock and roll book. So I decided I would try to focus my energy on finding some stories on country music, ghost lore, and anything kind of creepy there.
Oh, yeah, that's full of creepy stuff. And rock and roll, of course, has always been full of creep factor. Now, since we talked, and I want to talk to you about this, whether you've heard anything. We've had a couple really influential artists pass, and of course, there's always conspiracy theories floating around. Number one, of course, David Bowie.
Right.
Have you heard anything, through the grapevine of any stories of Mr. Bowie? I mean, because I've heard it was, he was killed by the Zionists. They did him in.
Yeah.
But have you heard anything kind of on the underground? Has there been any Bowie sightings?
You know me too well, because I've been really out there searching almost continually and asking people, especially with Bowie experts, if they've heard any David Bowie ghost stories yet. And I haven't heard any ghost stories, but what I am finding out is just the deep kind of occult knowledge that David Bowie had. And, I bet you our mutual friend, Gary Patterson, would be interested in that, because, you had in the 70s that whole sect of Led Zepp, Jimmy Page, who were drawn to the, some people would call it dark arts or dark magic or black magic. I kind of consider it almost sort of like Celtic magic, or just kind of Celtic spirituality. They were all drawn to that, but Bowie was very, very big into that, and I'm sure that's why some of this conspiracy theory and theories around him kind of grew up. But I was not familiar with a lot of these stories. And there was even one story that I was trying to kind of confirm that he lived in a haunted house, or that he was just so stoned that he thought it was a haunted house. He went through some pretty. This is the major problem with of investigating the occult with rock and roll is sometimes you have to kind of tease out, what's the real supernatural, paranormal, ghost lore story, or what's just a really good bender.
Yeah, exactly. You got to know the difference, and sometimes separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, is tough.
Hey, man, I was going to ask you real quick. I didn't mean to, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you on that. You were talking about, obviously, the occult connections with Bowie. I know he had a lot of, if you just looked in some of the subject matter he wrote about and those videos and stuff, obviously he always played, into the kind of androgynistic zone and stuff,
Sure.
kind of the duality of spirit and all that, which doesn't some of that tie in with some of the Crowley teachings, or Crowley, however you want to pronounce it?
Absolutely. Crowley was especially, he became popular during the Victorian era, which was such a button-down era, and his whole, the thrust of his philosophy was sort of, do what you want, and that flew in the face of that era, but was certainly adopted by, the 60s and 70s rock artists like the Beatles, like Jimmy Page, and David Bowie, and Bowie's, androgynistic take on that, I'm sure was somehow influenced by, if not Crowley himself, then certainly that philosophy.
Sure. When Bowie died, I certainly didn't see it coming. It was almost like it was kept a secret that he had cancer, and it took a lot of folks by surprise when Bowie passed on. And at first, I thought, okay, is this a joke? I mean, because
like one of those bad, hoaxes.
Where you see it all over Facebook, so and so is dead. And so I researched it. I said, wow, and I started looking into it like you, and he did have a deep belief in aliens. He believed in space aliens deeply. He had a deep belief in the cult to some extent, and a very, very interesting guy. Even more interesting as far as his interest in the paranormal than I even realized, because he did Ziggy Stardust, where he played, of course, that androgynous role. And then, of course, he sang to the stars. In fact, one of his biggest hits was, of course, to coincide with the moon landing, which was Major Tom. Or Space Oddity, rather. Sorry about that. And which I thought he was a great influential rocker, but I don't get. I've heard a lot of conspiracy theories behind Bowie. A couple of people said to me, through the grapevine, the Illuminati did him in. He was getting too close to the truth. I don't believe that. I don't buy it. But,
I always wonder why it takes them so long. He was 60. Was he 69?
Yeah, he was knocking the door of 70. Yeah, and now we're going to take him.
It just doesn't. Yeah. Right. It just doesn't. If you have a group that is so powerful, and they're trying to get a hold of this guy, but they let him live to almost 70 years old, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
But then you have Glenn Frey, who dies, who's equally as talented, in my opinion. No one even says anything. Glenn Frey's dead. Okay, no conspiracy theory behind him.
But you also got to consider, though, too. I mean, and you can argue then how influential the Eagles were versus Bowie, but it's a thing too, and at least in my view, and being kind of an outsider through punk and all that kind of stuff and alternative music, fans of fringe, or what at the time was extremely fringe music, are very, very rabid fans, and that's the ones you're gonna get the most out of. It seems like it seems that most often that you have characters like Morrison and Joplin and folks like that lived by, kind of marched to their own drum, as it were, and was kind of here and was gone, and they leave that kind of an impact. But the thing is, just like with Bowie, stepping out of, he just kept recreating himself, going through the minimalist phase and going up. Even, I don't know if you guys ever listened to his work with Tin Machine. I love Tin Machine, and that that was a later band, and to me it was just as powerful as what he was doing with the Spiders. So
sure.
Well, you bring up a really good point about Bowie and about some of the other artists you mentioned. Jim Morrison, there's ghost lore that surrounds him. Janis Joplin, there's ghost lore that surrounds her. What I think is special about rock and roll, and you wrote a book too, so usually what happens is after you write the book, you start kind of processing the material, and that's where I'm at with this country and rock thing. But the main difference I feel is the difference between rock and roll and country is rock and roll still, to me, is much more of an outsider's art.
Yeah.
In other words, you have artists that always sort of come from the fringe, culturally, spiritually, maybe even geographically from these centers. If you want to talk about Elvis, who wasn't really a mainstream artist. I mean, he was kind of from the ghetto in Memphis, and achieved stardom. If you think about the Beatles, they came from Liverpool, not London.
Yeah.
And so I think what happens is with those artists, they're not afraid to embrace these alternative spiritual notions. Bowie was certainly that way. And I think that's why this whole kind of philosophy of weird kind of follows these guys. So maybe not Glenn Frey so much, because he really wasn't. The Eagles were pretty much always mainstream.
Sure they were. They absolutely were.
And so, but Bowie wasn't. So you'll have this whole mythos surrounding these folks. And I think you kind of nailed the difference between, what's the difference between the haunted rock and roll and the haunted country music?
Yeah. Well, like I would have thought, because like Lemmy dying, I would have thought that Lemmy would have had a lot of lore surrounding him, because he was a really eccentric guy.
Right. I would have assumed that they were going to be saying was it the Roxy or the whiskey? I just waiting to get like somebody with a photograph of him pulling the slots, because he would sit there and play slots all day when he wasn't on tour. And he
really
almost lived there, and
yeah.
But I was going to ask you too. You were mentioning down in Memphis, and which it's been a little while since I've been out doing any live shows, but one of the last shows we had done was in Memphis, so we got to go down kind of what their Music Row was and everything, and even got to, which is, I guess it sounds silly, but I'd never been to the Mississippi before, so I want to get my feet in Mississippi mud, and
I did the same thing.
Okay, oh, thank God. I thought it was just me, but it's one of those things. It feels like you kind of connect more with it. I'm from Kentucky. You're going to be doing good to find me in shoes anyway, but it's a thing where there's an earthiness to it, a connection to it, and it just you kind of get sort of an awe feeling, because, like you said, that a lot of these people grew up up and around that area. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Little Richard live in Memphis for a while?
Probably, and he's originally from Georgia, right?
Sure.
Yep. So.
Yes, he is.
Around Macon or something, wasn't
it?
Yeah.
Macon, yeah. And I'm sure he spent time there. I think pretty much everyone had to at that era.
Yeah.
Well, and what's so funny is that, and I don't mean to monopolize what you're saying, but like
no,
the way. Well, I don't know the last time you were in Memphis and stuff, but that really struck me, because there's so much darker history that there's obviously dark stuff happening in Nashville. Come on, but it was like the dirtier side of Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? So it was like flip side, and it was very tooth and nail for those guys, and it was really interesting. My father-in-law had actually played music many years ago, like on the streets with Elvis and stuff when they were just starting, and
really,
and he had told me, which he has passed since then, and he was a really young guy, and he said it was just, there was a certain magic to it. He said they knew even then that he was just going to be huge. It was just one of those things. Certain people have a glow to them, I guess you want to call that, a charisma or whatever, and he said that was definitely one of the guys that did.
I know what you mean, because I actually met Prince on several occasions. I got to talk with him a few times, and that was another one I wanted to bring up since we had you last on the show, Prince passing. And and I live here in Minnesota. I knew Prince. I mean, he was just a member of our state's community. I mean, everybody knew him, and a lot of folks didn't take him as famous Prince. They just took him as Prince, and we conversed with him. The way that he passed away seems so odd to everybody that from the state that knew him. No one knew that. Of course, most drug addicts, you don't know are drug addicts till they're either dead or they go to rehab or whatever. But it just seems such a weird set of circumstances, the way that Prince met his end. Have you heard anything kind of swirling around about Prince?
And again, I have been searching for both Bowie and by the way, Bowie, I think if I get the sequel to Haunted Rock and Roll out there, he will be in there, and a lot of this occult lore is just too good to pass up. The only thing I heard about, Prince, I heard some very interesting stories about his, I guess you would call his paranormal life, because he apparently had epilepsy when he was young.
Right.
And the story is that he went to his mother, and I don't know whether he even remembered this, but he went to his mother and said, "Don't worry about that anymore because I've been healed." And apparently, to me, what sounded like an angel or some type of spiritual entity came and healed him of that. So that was one of the stories I heard. And then I heard a absolutely hilarious Prince ghost story that a woman ran over her husband, and she claimed when police asked why she did it, she said the ghost of Prince jumped out in front of her, and she had to swerve to miss Prince, and of course,
well, sure, that totally makes sense. I do know that Prince was a deep believer in chemtrails. You know, he believed.
I came across that too.
Yeah, and in fact, I briefly had a conversation with him one time about that. And he.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
I should be interviewing you.
I only live 3 hours from where he lived. I mean, so
right.
I knew him. I interviewed him for radio several times because he'd always give the Minnesota media first dibs and everything, and because he was a hometown guy, he chose not to leave. He was one of us, and he wanted to be viewed as such, and so he was really, really avid when it came to helping the members of the media here in this state first, because he really believed in paying it back. But anyhow, that was something that he had mentioned off air when we were years ago. I'm talking many years ago when I was doing an interview with him. I do believe it was just when he first went and became the symbol, the artist formerly known as Prince. And we had this conversation about, chemtrails and how it's changing people's minds and how people are going crazy because of them. And he really went on for about 5 to 10 minutes just talking about that. And it was really interesting what he had to say.
I had heard something.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just find him, I find him extremely, both him and Bowie, I find them, and you mentioned about Elvis, too. I think we were talking a little bit about Elvis, about the kind of glow that they have. Mm-hmm. But there's something about Prince I would find almost intimidating to talk to.
Yeah, he's 5 foot nothing. And but when he grabbed a guitar, he became a giant.
Oh, he was a monster.
Yeah. And that was what struck me, because I was actually at a media event at his home that he was putting on for Minnesota media. And we were actually at Paisley Park. And I remember, he's hobnobbing with everyone. Thank you for coming. Very soft-spoken guy, very soft-spoken. But until he hit the stage, it's almost like a lion was unleashed.
It's that stage persona. And
exactly.
Being in a position, I recognize that, because that's what's so funny. The people that are usually the most outlandish on stage are the ones that pull way back. They let go of all that. They let go of all that rage on the stage and leave it under the lights. And then when they go back, they can be kind of sedate. I was going to ask you, Joel, because you had mentioned something about the chemtrails. I had heard some scuttlebutt about, like you're talking about rumors and all this. Somebody said, well, he was speaking out about the chemtrails, guys. That's what got him. I don't know if there's any, obviously.
But he'd been talking about chemtrails for the last 15 years. Why did they wait till now to do them in? Oh my God, he's been talking about for 15 years. That's the tipping point. So that didn't make any sense to me. Why, if you're going to buy into the rumors that have swirling around, and of course I hear them all being very close to where he died. I hear all the rumors of, he was murdered, and it ties into the song "Let's Go Crazy," because don't let the elevator bring you down. Where did he die? The elevator. I've heard,
wow.
Yeah, I've heard all those rumors. And of course that was the song he played at that media event, is "Let's Go Crazy," and of course he's like, "Thank y'all for coming. I really, really appreciate it." And then he gets on the stage, it's like, "Let's go crazy!" And it's just total weird, like a 180. Yeah. But it was weird because he died on the elevator, and one of the poignant phrases in that song is "Don't let the elevator bring you down." Mm-hmm. And so then everybody ran with that as a conspiracy theory, that it was a direct, we got him kind of moment. We killed him in the elevator kind of thing. I don't buy that he was murdered. I mean, he was on fentanyl, for crying out loud, which is a horribly, horribly hardcore painkiller. He had a lot of joint issues and back issues from years of performing. And, I think anybody that is that avid of a performer, and that, he was watching a Prince show is a lot like watching the early days of James Brown. He's just everywhere on that stage. Sure. I don't know anyone's body that could take that kind of beating for as many years as his did. But yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I was, oh my God, Prince is dead. You've got to be kidding me. I thought it was another hoax. And of course, it kind of struck me close because it happened, to one of ours.
Right.
It'd be like Bob Dylan dying. Oh, go ahead.
Right. Well, remember how, I mean, as I'm researching these stories, I think there is kind of a pattern of how these ghost stories work. And I think they start out in the fan communities, and like you say, in the local community surrounding these artists, and then they kind of bubble up, and then they might hit the internet. And so we might not get any of these ghost stories for years, even though people might be talking about them. And if you're connected to the right communities and the right fan communities, it could be something that a family member has experienced, and that won't get out. Like, I know the George Harrison story about how when he died, the whole room was aglow. I didn't hear about that until I watched a documentary, I think it was by Scorsese recently, a few years after he died. I didn't hear about that until his wife started talking about it. So that's kind of the hard thing about these stories is there may be an initial, quasi or real or whatever you want to call it, event that people interpret or believe is supernatural. They hold it in, then they talk about it, and then it starts kind of circling in this verbal community, and then eventually maybe we'll get it.
Sure. It has to go through certain levels of surfacing before it actually comes to the mainstream, because it starts at the local level. Did you hear about him dying? I mean, we heard about him dying in the elevator, in the local area, and go to, yeah, it sure was weird. And then, of course, like you said, it's like it has to build up to the surface, and it has to be the right person releasing that information at the right time. And like when you're writing Haunted Rock and Roll, again, everybody, I want everyone to go out there. If you don't have a copy of Haunted Rock and Roll, shame on you. It's a great book. Go pick it up. It's available everywhere, literally everywhere. Amazon, you can get it direct from Llewellyn, the publisher. Lots of different places you can go ahead and get this book. I would definitely recommend if you are you're a rock connoisseur and you're a paranormal connoisseur or any kind of connoisseur of the strange and unusual, get this book. It also has loads of rock and roll history that I did not know, and I found that equally as fascinating, the history you put in there.
Well, that's one of the best compliments I got on this book was from someone who said, basically I don't believe in ghosts, but I really love the history in it. So, if anything would come out of a good ghost story, the ghost is really emblematic of the past, and the past equals history. So if I can get some of these people just to kind of pay attention to something that I think is very important, which is the history of rock and roll, then I think it's worth putting out there.
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. It all starts with Robert Johnson, allegedly. If you buy into it, he's the godfather of all this tragedy.
He really is the godfather of so much of, they consider him, musicologists really do consider him the grandfather of rock and roll. But he's also the grandfather of the 27 Club.
Yep.
He's the grandfather of the Crossroad Blues curse. And, of course, he has the original kind of ghost story that starts off rock and roll, which is that the deal that he made with the devil at the crossroads down in Mississippi. He gave up his soul to become a great guitar player, and that kind of theme has gone throughout rock and roll history, and is about as close to the heart and soul of rock and roll myth as any other story that I've come across.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you. Again, everyone, pick up your copy of Haunted Rock and Roll. Better bookstores everywhere. We got to get out of here, pay some bills, and we come back. We're shifting gears into the, legends of country music. They got their own ghosts, guys, and they're equally as eerie as the rock and roll. Don't go anywhere. Be right back with Matt Swayne right after this. Anavar Media LCC is a dedicated team of professionals committed to helping business development scale and protect their websites, mobile applications, enterprise software solutions in the Northeast Ohio area. Locally owned since 2012, our client-centered values truly sets Anavar apart. Contact us today to learn how you can get 25% off your first project. Call them at 234-380-4852. Again, that's 234-380-4852, or visit them at www.anavar.com. Again, that's www.anavar.com.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
You've seen all kinds of movies, but you've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
See the Rocky Horror Picture Show. A different set of Jaws. Rated R.
Author Steve Asher brings us Hauntings of Trilogy. Steve's first book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary. This first installment of the trilogy tells us the tale of the Kentucky State Penitentiary and why it's so haunted. With every turn of the page will be something new and terrifying. Pick up Steve's new book, Hauntings of the Kentucky State Penitentiary, at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and all better bookstores everywhere. Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com.
You're dead! I saw you die! I was faking. I used ninja focus to slow my heart rate down. What are you doing? I'm burying you. I'm alive! I'm alive! You're waking the neighbors! No. Shut up! No! Now I'm gonna play your drums.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me.
Steve E. Asher.
That's right, the Steve Asher. That's right. You should go as the Steve Asher from now on. Just the, you know. I
like the Steve Asher.
Yeah, there you go. The Steve Asher. The one and only Steve Asher. We're talking with Mr. Matt Swayne tonight. Matt has not only, like we covered the first half hour for everyone that knows. If you don't know, you've been under a rock. I'd like to know what your rock is painted with. But he wrote Haunted Rock and Roll. Great, great book. And now we're shifting gears. He comes back at us with Ghosts of Country Music. And that is like the, really quite honestly, country music has been mired with the paranormal. I mean, really it has. Even the songs are spooky, a lot of them.
Right. There are a lot of there are a lot of country music. The songs themselves deal with ghosts and spirits. And, the connection with rock and roll that I found, and here's kind of, again, when I talk about processing the book afterwards, when I stepped away from Haunted Rock and Roll, I thought, rock and roll is just really, there's something spiritually active about it. Mm-hmm. And then I started to look into country music, and I found a lot of similarities. Not all, I mean, they weren't totally similar, but they were similar at the root in that music by itself is a spiritual tool. Mm-hmm. And it is any religion, spiritual system, or spirituality, music. Sure. I have a hard time coming up with it, whether it's drumming, rhythms, whether it's singing hymns, whether it's organ fugues, all of those different types of music. It must be that music and spirituality go hand in hand, because when I started to, with some of these tips that I started in rock and roll, Elvis Presley was mentioned. I would get these little tantalizing tips that there were stories in country, and that's what out for them. And sure enough, I found just as many in rock and roll. A little different as far as tone and substance, but pretty much a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
Well,
I would agree.
I was going to say real quick that being, obviously from Kentucky and grew up a lot with country music, like you said, there is parallels in other things that tie rock and country together, which I think where rock and roll was more of an act of rebellion, I guess, in the times it was, where a lot of the early country stuff, some of it was obviously passed down, oral traditions and music and, fiddles and all that, but a lot of these people were disenfranchised. A lot of times these people felt alienated and like ghosts themselves, if you want to connect it to like that. And they had their own little communities and they built their own little sounds and all that. So especially if you listen to like the early country stuff, it always sort of had sort of a hollow, haunted sound to it. And like you said, the subject matter, a lot of times, it would touch on death and touch on a whole lot of different things that most at the time, people were listening to whatever it was, the Charleston or the Madison or something. They weren't, middle class people weren't touching this.
Yeah,
and you had that similarity of going, okay, we're on fringes, but just on different levels. And I think that for myself, that's that tie between country and rock that's always going to be there. As long as you've got situations like we're in those songs, it's always going to be there.
Well, the thing of it is country music, and I don't mean to step on anyone here, though, has gone through a whole total shift now from the old haunting country music to more pop music. And to me, it's lost its charm and its haunting feeling. Now we're all happy and we're Taylor Swift and we're singing these poppy songs. But Johnny Cash Johnny Cash was a dark guy, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the thing is, like you said, you go through that corporate ringer and go, okay, that's nice, but here, let's do this, let's add this, let's change this, let's color your hair, let's got a couple extra pounds, drop them, we'll put you in some sexy tight, jeans, and boom, now you're Hollywood, and it kind of takes the heart out of it, and that's just, that's a trend a lot of people, especially around here, have had issues with, and I'm like, look, you know what country is to you, but this is what it is to them, and that's one of those things you just kind of got to accept it and go on with it. Sure.
Now, who in your research of country music, of course, that is coming out, if my dates are correct, February 2017 is when the publishing date is. So soon after that, everyone will be able to get their hands on a copy, of course, of better bookstores everywhere. But who was basically country music's Robert Johnson?
Well, I guess you would have to say, in both senses, in both the musical sense and in a paranormal sense, I would have to say that Hank Williams, of course, Hank Williams Sr., would have been that keystone figure that Robert Johnson has. And I'll tell you a little something that isn't in the book because I couldn't verify the information, but Hank Williams, and he grew up, I believe, in Alabama, and I think he made his way to Birmingham, and he learned guitar from an African-American guitar player, blues guitar player, who was from the Delta region. And the story that I heard that I couldn't really confirm was that he was also somebody who sold his soul to the devil to get that kind of guitar playing ability, and that there's somehow some type of connection between Hank Williams and him. I couldn't confirm that. It sure sounded good enough to me to use, but I didn't want to go. The one thing I've learned about my readers is they're really, really smart, and they are also very, very connected where I think some people, and I think some authors might even do this, they kind of write about the paranormal as it's almost like a joke, but I try not to do that because people take it very, very seriously.
Right.
So when I come across a story like that, I want some type of other verification,
Sure.
some type of written record that I can tell people, well, it might not be true, but this is kind of, it's just my journalism background. But,
Sure.
But Hank Williams becomes that figure, and the other connection, and by the way, Stephen, you put a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, the connection between rock and roll and country, it was very well said. The other connection is that tragedy in the lives of some of these country celebrities is also a lot like the tragedy in the rock celebrities. Not a lot, but several of these folks in country music die young and die in tragic instances, like accidents, or they just die young. And I'm sure you guys know the paranormal field a lot better than I do. Tragedy and these ghost stories go hand in hand. With Hank, his spirit seems to have inhabit just about every place that he's ever visited. So there are ghost stories about him at the Ryman. There's ghost stories about him at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, which is a bar near the Ryman. There's ghost stories about him in the alley between the Ryman and Tootsie's. So he's spiritually speaking, is well established in Nashville. But the other stories you hear is there's one interesting story that pops into my mind that is in the book that is it actually happens when and it doesn't occur in Nashville, it occurs someplace else, but a girl was going to a dance and she took 4 of her friends to this dance, and on the way back she gets lost. She doesn't have any money to call anybody. She's running, the fuel tank is almost on E, and she pulls into this sort of gas station, but then realizes she doesn't have any money. And a gentleman came out with a cowboy hat, a brown suit, and calmed her down, gave her some money, gave her directions, spoke in a very distinct voice, she recalled saying. And then, so everything was fine, and she makes it home, and everything's okay.
Sure.
The next morning, her mother is going through a country magazine, and this girl didn't really like country music, or at least the country music that her mother liked. And she flipped the page, and there was a picture of Hank Williams, and this girl says, "That's the guy who saved me last night." And she's like, "Well, that's impossible. He's been dead for years."
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the stories about Hank that's out there too. That whether ghost lore or real, it's certainly a compelling one.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hank Williams died in 1953 of taking too many pills. Really, I'm right. I mean, that's when he died, right? 53, drug overdose. And since then,
well, that's in kind of dispute now, whether it was drugs or he was actually very unhealthy.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of most people do, but in the research for this, they're not totally sure that was the case. It could have been alcohol. It also could have been his heart condition. It could have been a lot of things.
Maybe
I don't know what the official
collected,
explanation was.
Yeah. So it's up to debate now. It's up for debate what really took his life.
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. Now, Johnny Cash was always a mystical figure as well in country music lore.
Oh, yeah.
And and not to give too much of the book away, we got to leave something on the bone for people to read about. But I got to hear about Johnny Cash. Has got to have some good ghost stories attached to him. Got to be.
Johnny Cash was the most mind-blowing person that I wrote about in the book, that I was discovering things as I was reading a few of his bios and autobiography about his autobiography. As I was exploring, the guy is he is deeply, deeply involved in the supernatural, spirituality, and even spiritualism. And a couple things that I found out about Johnny Cash. One kind of cool story is that he owned a house in Jamaica. I think it's called Cinnamon Hill, and the house was very haunted. It's in a haunted section of Jamaica. There is a super famous haunted house nearby where a woman who would kill her slaves died, and he actually wrote a song about her, and I'm blanking on the name of the song, but in any event, Johnny Cash's house too was haunted by a woman, and he said in a biography that he was entertaining 6 people one night, and the figure of a woman walked through the doors, through the dining room, and right straight through these very hard, solid doors, double doors on the other side, and everyone saw it. And the biographer who stayed in Cinnamon Hill had his own. He would hear these strange sounds that Johnny Cash had said he heard the whole time. So Johnny Cash had spirits around him. Now there have been a few paranormal investigators who have researched that house and have said that they have picked up indications that both Johnny and June are haunting that.
Really?
That house. That's kind of the most recent information I got. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Johnny and June. You know, being stuck in this house now, and you know,
They're in Jamaica. I mean, come
well,
on.
they are in
Let
Jamaica.
it
I
go.
mean, you know, well, that is true. You know, the weather's great, times are great, but you'd think you'd want to move on. You know, to be honest.
Yeah.
With you. You know, I wouldn't want to be
Right.
stuck in Jamaica. You know, a third world country. Anyhow, that's just me. You know, just don't drink the water. You'll be all right.
Hey, Matt, can I ask you a quick question? Again, these, you know, be it rock or country or whatever, these are, you know, like you get the term rock idol or country idol. People are very protective of their idols. In researching this, I'm just curious from a writer's perspective, was there certain people that it was harder to research or people more tight-lipped about or anything like that? Because, I mean, I know in writing my own stuff, there's some places they just wouldn't talk about, you know, like the executioner room. It was very hard to find any information on that, and certain places where there's a lot of violence or hangings and stuff at the prison and things. It was really hard to dig up, pardon the pun, information on it. Was there one particular story or chapter that it seemed like you were never going to get through because it was so hard to pull it up, or did it just all kind of just come very naturally to you?
That's a really good question. In the country books seem to go a lot easier than the rock and roll one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not I'm not positive whether maybe that community is a little more open about their stars, but there are times, especially when I was writing the rock and roll one, where I would think there has got to be some stories about Keith Moon, right?
Sure.
Right. Keith Moon and Janis Joplin died in the same apartment, I believe.
Yeah.
So you would think there has to be stories
something
about them.
Yeah.
Something there.
But there wasn't. And I think one of the things that happened is after Keith Moon dies in this apartment, Pete Townsend buys that apartment. And sometimes you wonder whether they're not actively... now I got my conspiracy theory. They're actively squelching these stories. But Jimi Hendrix is another one. I thought for sure... Now I'm starting to find a few. But you know, I guess I never thought of it as like them trying to... or the community not trying to protect those idols. But it's a very good point, and it might be one of the reasons why I do get this kind of resistance at certain times, at certain levels.
Well, you know, country music has always had its share of, you know, mystical songs, whether it be, you know, Driving with Private Malone, you know, about the Corvette with a ghost in it, or Ghost Riders in the Sky. It almost seems like country music embraces the paranormal much more readily than rock and roll. I mean, in my opinion, just as a listener, where, you know, there's always a paranormal component to a lot of these songs. You know, why, and that could be maybe that's why it was more open, because they've already kind of busted that floodgate open of the paranormal just through their art.
Yeah, I think rock and roll embraces more of the dark side of the supernatural, and country has a much more traditional sense of the occult than probably rock and roll, and that's a very sweeping generalization that can be easily shot down. But I would say that's kind of a trend. When you think when I wrote this book, most of the stories are like the ones I told you, that are very traditional type of ghost stories. It's not like, you know, a dark mass appearing over, you know, Geezer Butler in his bedroom because Ozzy brought in a 16th century book on magic.
Sure.
It's more of the ghost that's helpful. You know, Bobby Mackey's is probably probably the exception to that rule, at least in my book.
Yeah, and that's famously haunted. I mean, you know, just about every paranormal show and their mother has gone to Bobby Mackey's to investigate.
Right.
You know, so that's very well documented that haunting. Now, when you were working on the country music book, and of course you talked to people that were close to these artists, is there almost a sense that they want there to be ghost stories? That way maybe their artists truly haven't left them, or, you know, their loved ones that they love so well has never left. Elvis never really left the building. Or do you get the real sense that, you know, that there's more to it than we even realize?
Well, I think since I started writing these, I will be very honest with and tell you that I know I have less knowledge about that now than I did when I started, because it becomes like peeling an onion. There's just layers and layers and layers of this, and certainly I think, especially when I think about the ghost stories about Elvis, I really do think that some of them might be just people wanting to hold on to Elvis because he was so beloved. But then there are other stories that crop up, and then there's always just like the kind of the ghost lore story, and ghost lore again for me is just basically a ghost story that becomes folklore, that becomes kind of a shared narrative that people all have. And there are stories about Elvis, about a truck driver picking up a young guy on his way to Memphis, and he gives him the address to Graceland, and he drops the guy off, and the truck driver suddenly realizes it was a young Elvis Presley going back home. Gotcha. You know, those kind of stories crop up too, so that's another layer. And then there's the interesting layer that is maybe, and this is a theory that some of the paranormal experts I talk to, maybe there's a connection between consciousness and these ghost stories. That either, if I put you in a haunted place, you're going to mistake natural phenomena for paranormal phenomena.
Sure.
There's another layer which says, if I put you in a haunted place, I raise your consciousness to such a level that maybe you can create your own kind of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
So there's layer after layer after layer, and it might not be either or. It might be both and. That's why I am more confused now than ever.
You know, something I've noticed is like because again the differences and similarities in country and rock. Rock and roll, especially metal and heavy metal, it's so steeped in the occult, but it's sort of, a lot of times, unless you're often really, really heavy, like Danish black metal or something, it's almost tongue-in-cheekish a little bit. There's fun with it. It's sort of laughing at death, where in the country songs, nobody's laughing, you know, because that's real life to it. And it's more of, we see this is horrible, I'm documenting it, where country or music and metal or rock and metal and stuff touches on these a little bit more for the thrill factor and the shock factor of it.
Well, that's an excellent point, because in the book I talk about Geezer. I think it's Geezer Butler who has this paranormal experience in this apartment Ozzy brought in this book, and the next thing Geezer knows is
I think he stole as well, didn't he?
yeah, he did. Yeah, well, I figured if I told you that Ozzy brought a book back, you would automatically assume it was stolen.
Yeah, exactly. It was an ill-gotten
read it
book.
quickly. The cops will be here in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Read it really fast. Right. Yeah. Get to the good stuff.
What does Geezer do after he's had this horrible experience with here's the guy who is playing in Black Sabbath. He throws the book away. He renounces this kind of, so you almost get the sense that, maybe this Black Sabbath thing, once you really come up to something you can't explain, all of this notion of, dark and Satan worshiping, I think goes right out the door.
Yeah.
So
right. When you meet
how serious they are, I don't know.
Yeah. When push comes to shove, they're not shoving back. They're running away.
Right.
Exactly. Like most of us would, being
fight or flight. Yeah, and most people with these sense run.
Exactly. We only got a few minutes left, Matt, and why don't you go ahead, tell the audience so they can get a hold of you and buy your books and all that kind of good stuff. Plug away, my friend.
Sure. Well, I'm not a great book marketer by any stretch, but I did invest in a website now, so you can get a hold of me at mattswayne.com. I have a lot of the books up there, and they'll link you right to Amazon. If not, please go visit your bookstore. Ask them for a copy if they don't have it. Shake them down if you have to, cry a little, roll on the aisles, whatever you have to do.
Sure. Accost them if you must. Accost them violently if you must.
Certainly, I know it's certainly worth it. And like I said, it was when I got mine to read this, I was kind of like, okay, well, let's see how this is going to go. You never know. I was afraid maybe you'd go too hokey or go to everything's a demon or this and that, but you really kept it, where you were more objective, and that was what was so great about it, because you kind of put it out there. It's like, here, you decide this, and it was just the way I do it myself. So look, I'm not here to sell you on this. This is what's brought to me. You make your own conclusions. Mm-hmm. It was what I find all the more compelling about this book.
And again,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love it, and I know Ghosts of Country Music. Can't wait to read it. I'm sure you hit the bullseye again with it. And again, the publishing date will be February 2017. So thereafter, folks, you can get your own copy of Ghosts of Country Music and read a whole lot more than we were able to cover here. Believe me, it gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And country music, man, is always like, before we leave, is always got that black hole about it. There's always that black cloud. There's, my truck won't start, the dog left, and the wife left me. I mean, there's always those horrible things in country music. There's a tear in my bear. That kind of music, so it's almost like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes that stuff goes wrong.
Right.
And I've noticed that with that kind of music as well. But again, thank you so much, Matt Swayne, for coming on the show. Again, everyone, pick up the books. Go to mattswayne.com. That's where you can go ahead and order all these awesome books. And, of course, better bookstores everywhere. And probably some CD ones, too, have it. So don't worry. You'll find it somewhere.
Don't wait until tomorrow. Go now.
Yeah, go now. You're going to want to go now. Go now. On behalf of myself, Joel Sturgis, and Mr. Steve Asher, we would like to thank you for this edition of listening to After Hours AM. Take care of each other, love each other, and read up on your rock and roll. It gets weirder and weirder, and don't forget about the country music.
Thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.